Hey, Shalom, Shalom. Kahala Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachak Wadash. Peace and double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to the hopeful elect. This is the book of Romans 15 and verse 4. For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope. So the topic of this lesson is going into there's many lessons in our records, the records of our forefathers that came before us. So it's important for us to go into these accounts, into the things that happened aforetime, the things that were written aforetime, because they're there for our comfort. All right, they're there to give us hope. So one such example that I wanted to get into, and not only that, it's hope, it's faith, it's faith boosters in there, but also there's judgments for Israel that went off. Okay, I wanted to touch on this real quick. Okay, and this is what happened to Israel. All right, so I want to go into this record real quick. All right, I just been studying a little bit in the book of 2 Kings, and we're gonna go into this and see why the Lord did what He did to us. Because you also had a video the elder Manata Zakba had put up about this woman that come saying, oh, well, you saying black people curse, or what about white people? They do all this shit and they get off. But they don't understand how actually the Lord works. Okay, how does He work? He's going to chastise the ones that He loves. He doesn't love the so-called white man, so He's going to let him do whatever and then bring a judgment on him in the end. You ain't going to be saying that when the Lord brings that major judgment. But why does He punish our people? Because He loves our people, because we are His people. Okay, referring to blacks, Latinos, Native Americans, so-called. We are the biblical Israelites. All right, but I'm gonna run through this chapter real quick. Lord's will is edifying. 2 Kings 24 and 1. In his days, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, and Jehoiakim became his servant 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him. All right, and his name was Eliakim, and it was changed to Jehoiakim. That was the name that was given unto him. All right. Yep, there. 2 Kings 23 and 34. And Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim the son of Josiah king in the room of Josiah his father, and turned his name to Jehoiakim, and took Jehoahaz away, and he came to Egypt and died there. All right, so there's always a vying for power. All right, and it was Egypt, and a lot of times it was Assyria or Babylon. All right, that was vying for power to control Israel, because it was a key piece of land in the earth. All right, it dealt with a lot of trade, and having access and power over Israel meant a lot of wealth and riches. Okay, and also the nations knew that this is the Lord's people, so it's like a trophy being able to take us down. All right, that's how they looked at us, and they still do. All right, because we're the greatest people on earth. All right, we're a great people through the spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. And these nations, they want to be able to say that they took down the Lord's people, the great people of the Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. All right, but the only way they could take us down is if we transgress against our power. Okay, and this is what it's going to go into. So it says here, 2 Kings 24 and 1. In his days, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, and Jehoiakim became his servant 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him. So wasn't this guy just serving Pharaoh Necho? So now he's with Nebuchadnezzar. So it was all about who was in power. And the Lord subjected us unto the heathen because we were going off. And Yahweh sent against him bands of the Chaldees, and bands of the Syrians, and bands of the Moabites, and bands of the children of Ammon, and sent them against Judah to destroy it, according to the word of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai, which he spake by his servants, the prophets. All right, because a few generations up, you had a few generations in the past, the forefathers of the kings of Judah, one of them was Manasseh, and he did a lot of wickedness. And he even sacrificed his own son, all right, to Molech. So the Lord had Judah paying for it. We are the northern kingdom, the northern tribes had already paid the piper, so to speak, by way of the Assyrians. All right. And these nations were brutal. Okay. So there was a lot of brutal, gruesome things that was going on. All right. But why? Because we transgress against the Lord. All right. Many times. And the Lord gave us many chances to repent. And yet our people wax worse and worse. So this going into these accounts helps us understand why our people are the way they are. All right. 2 Kings 24:3. Surely at the commandment of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua came this upon Judah to remove them out of his hand for the sins of Manasseh, according to all that he did. See? So Manasseh, you can go into the accounts a few chapters up. All right. He sacrificed his own son to Molech. He made him go through the fire. Okay. Which Israel was doing that a lot. Okay. There was Asherah poles, which is going into basically sexual worship and all types of idolatry and wickedness. All right, because the heathen nations, they worship sex, so they worship phallic symbols, and it's a lot of filth. All right, this is why the Lord told us not to follow not to put any other gods before Him. Okay, it's very simple, but Jake always has to overcomplicate it. The Lord expects us to love Him with all our heart and all our soul, and keep His commandments to the best of our ability. Is it that complicated? But Jake will always make it super complicated. Like that woman, why are we cursed and blah, blah, blah. Listen, either you fear the Lord and keep His commandments or you don't. Okay? And if you don't, there's going to be a judgment. It's a simple equation. All right? It doesn't have to be so confusing. But again, our people haven't been in Babylon, haven't been deceived. They don't believe in the Most High. All right? But this is not nothing new. Nothing's new under the sun. Jake's been going off. All right. And also for the innocent blood that he shed, for he filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, which Yahweh Hashem Yahshua would not pardon. It is certain lines that you don't cross. And Jake crossed that line. All right. Now, the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? So Jehoiakim slept with his fathers, and Jehoiachin, Salaki if I'm mispronouncing that a bit, his son reigned in his stead. And the king of Egypt came not again any more out of his land, for the king of Babylon had taken from the river of Egypt unto the river Euphrates all that pertained to the king of Egypt. So he basically, everybody was fighting for dominion, and Israel most oftentimes was caught in the middle of that. All right. So it says Jehoiakim was 18 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months, and his mother's name was Nehushta, the daughter of Elnathan of Jerusalem. And he did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, according to all that his father had done. You see, and just a couple generations before, you had Josiah, and he did his best to take a lot. He caused Israel to remember the law. He had the law read and made Israel go, basically reminded them of the covenant through the Spirit of the Lord. All right. But just the generation after him, his son, you would think, okay, his father was, upright, even though he got judged in the end. But his father was upright. So why wouldn't he follow that? But no, Jake departed and did evil. All right. At that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up against Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. See, because in these chapters, we're reading vast periods of time in a very short amount of time. So we also have to remember that these changes, all right, it's like the difference between the decades. Look at how much worse Jake has got since the 60s until now. So imagine, we're reading certain kings reigned 18, 20, 30 years. Certain had less reign. But in the midst of the reign of these certain kings, a lot of things changed. The generation changed, and then Jake would go off. All right. And this is what happened here in Babylon the Great. All right. It says, and Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against the city and his servants did besiege it. And Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon, he and his mother, and his servants, and his princes, and his officers. And the king of Babylon took him in the 8th year of his reign, because they really wanted the royals of Judah, okay? Because that was the trophy, like I had mentioned. And he carried out thence all the treasures of the house of Yahweh, and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces all the vessels of gold which Solomon king of Israel had made in the temple of Yahweh, as Yahweh had said. And he carried away all Jerusalem, and all the princes, and all the mighty men of valor, even 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and smiths. None remained, save the poorest sort of the people of the land. Now remember, nothing's new under the sun. So we went into captivity during this time, and now we went into captivity once again, and this is the worst captivity ever, which is America. All right. But there's scripture that mentions that we will go into captivity no more after this. All right. But in these captivities, there were just men. There was a remnant that the Lord always had preserved throughout these ages, despite what was going on. All right. Even in the midst of this time with Babylon, you had Jeremiah. All right. And the Lord preserved Jeremiah's life throughout everything that was going on. All right. So in these accounts is a lot of inspiration, edification, and lessons to be learned, you know. That's why we have to eat the whole roll. Jeremiah 15:11, Yahweh Hashem Yahushua said, verily, and when I say eat the whole roll, I mean read the whole scriptures, all right? We have to go into all of the accounts, all right? Not just the New Testament, like so-called Christians do, all right? Jeremiah 15:11, Yahweh Hashem Yahushua said, verily it shall be well with thy remnant. Verily, I will cause the enemy to entreat thee well in the time of evil and in the time of affliction. All right. So that's exactly what happened to Jeremiah. The enemy entreated him well. When the Babylonians came, he said they already knew he was the prophet of the Lord, and they gave him no trouble. All right. The ones who was giving him trouble the most was Israel, man. Wicked Israelites. All right. So, you know, we have a lot of enemies, including our own people, you know, but the point being, the Lord delivered him, and he's going to deliver us in these last days. All right. So long as we remain faithful and keep doing what the Lord commanded, which is to teach, feed his sheep. All right. He's going to protect us in these last days, man. He's going to have angels around us. And this is the last captivity. So it's going to be dramatic, man. The way things, it's going to be miraculous deliverances left and right. All right. But 2 Kings 24 and 14, and he carried away all Jerusalem and all the princes and all the mighty men of valor, even 10,000 captives and all the craftsmen and smiths. None remained save the poorest sort of the people of the land. And he carried away Jehoiakim to Babylon, and the king's mother and the king's wives and his officers and the mighty of the land. Those carried he into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon. Okay, so it was really, they were dealing with the elites of Judah. That's who they really wanted. All right. And all the men of might, even 7,000, and craftsmen and smiths 1,000, all that were strong and apt. You see, there's 7,000. All right. So the Lord, even though they went into captivity, they were preserved, because the Lord was always going to preserve his people, his sheep. Even when we're going off, the Lord still looks out for us and doesn't have us be utterly destroyed. Okay. That the name of Israel would not be put out of the world, because we're the people that are made to praise his name. All right. And to follow his law, statutes, and commandments to the best of our ability, you know, and to teach. This is what we're going to be set up for in the kingdom. All right. We're going to teach the nations about righteousness. All right. Reading on, it says, and the king of Babylon made Mattaniah, his father's brother, king in his stead, and changed his name to Zedekiah. You see, the king of Babylon made Mattaniah, his father's brother, meaning his uncle, in his stead, and changed his name to Zedekiah. Yeah, Zedekiah got a real, the next chapter goes into it, but he got a gruesome judgment. All right. All his sons were slain in front of him, and his eyes were plucked out. All right. Because he didn't want to take heed to what Jeremiah was saying, all right, to submit to Babylon, because this is the ordinance of the Lord, all right. The same way we tell our people submit to the authorities of this place, to basically follow the laws, pay taxes, We're in captivity. It's the Lord's will. So we're not supposed to be puffed up and try to take the government down. And that's the spirit Jake was in. They didn't want to hear that Israel was going down. I don't know who the hell that was, but anyways, reading on, calling at 1:37 in the morning. So it's some shit, man. But anyways, 2 Kings 24:18. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of Yahweh, according to all that Jehoiakim had done. For through the anger of Yahweh it came to pass in Jerusalem and Judah, until he had cast them out from his presence, that Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. So you see, as I went through this record through the Spirit of the Lord, we were able to touch upon a lot of things that's going on in modern times. All right? Because all of these things were written aforetime for our learning. All right, so all of these records have value, have lessons in it, and you can read the scriptures a whole bunch of times, and every time you're going to think of something different. The Lord would work on your mind to show you something else that you may have not have noticed before. All right, so Lord's will, I'm going to get more into the habit of doing this, just going into certain chapters or records of what happened, and then applying it to what happened now, what's going on now with our people. All right, because we have to actually envision these things and remember that this, Christians read this book like as though it's a fairy tale book. All right, a lot of people read this book, not just Christians, but a lot of people read this book as though it's a fairy tale book. But this is actual historical documentation of what happened back then. All right, so it's important for us to go into it and to understand it. All right. So I'm going to close it out. Call halal Yahweh, B'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, B'Hashem Achar Kodash. Lord's will is edifying, and Lord's will I catch you on the next one. Shalom.